So let's talk about the foundation. This is a good place
Hmm.
to tie it in because now that we've sort
Sure.
of identified large, medium, and small agencies, the percentage
Hmm.
of which that exist within the United States. Let's talk
Hmm.
about that 70% and the
Right.
mission of Task Force 70 and the things that you're doing there. Because I think this is an interesting. You're the first person I've ever heard talk about attacking that problem, and
Hmm.
obviously here's the thing. This is why I wanted to spend so much time at the beginning of this getting into the foundation is because of your deep level of understanding of how things operate. This isn't a pissing
Hmm.
and moaning contest, and I've just chosen
Right.
this group because it's 70%. There seems like a real opportunity there.
Hmm.
Correct. There is an opportunity there, and it's the largest opportunity for a lot of reasons. And you
Hmm.
just identified every single one of those reasons, and you've got 70% of the cops out there that want and need to be trained, right? Not
Hmm.
everybody has the same level of motivation or drive to get
Right.
that done. But at the same time, that opportunity the fact that that opportunity is already at a severe disadvantage on so many
Hmm.
levels makes this a really important topic to talk about. And this is what I really wanted to get into. So you've kind of set the foundation for how you understand bureaucracy to work, the
Hmm.
Constitution to work, tax dollars, the funding, and also obviously when we get into the training piece, which is where the foundation is really focused, is
Hmm.
how that needs to be done correctly, right? And how that needs
Right.
to be done appropriately. So have
Right.
at it, man. Get into it.
So, knowing all of that information in the background, along with also understanding the how severely local small agency crime is changing. There's a excuse me, there's a serious sociological challenge that exists right now that didn't before. The Zoomer generation, uh, your and I generation, we're both Gen Xers.
Mhm.
Um, the first house we bought was probably right around 30 years old. We could afford to buy a house at about 30.
Yep.
The current generation coming up, the average is 40 years old. They can't afford to buy a house. And these are the kids that we want to be cops, right?
Right.
So we have a whole soup of sociological problems that are also discouraging them from following that, right?
Mhm.
It's also making crime, it's it's matriculating crime into smaller and smaller jurisdictions through the combination of addiction and the lack of the sanctity of the right to property.
Right.
Um,
Let's call it
like you,
psychiatric crisis for God's sakes.
right, because
Affected impacted by all of those things.
right. So all of those things impact small jurisdiction law enforcement at a greater percentage than big departments. Big cities have always been a shit show at the lower level, like at the lower level of society or
Sure.
the less rich part of society, right? That's never really been a problem in small jurisdictions because they kind of police themselves. The citizenry does. Well, the interconnective tissue of the citizenry in small towns has almost completely eroded because of all of these larger societal issues that we have no control over. So,
Okay.
knowing all the problems we talked about or all the challenges that we talked about with taxes and demographic issues and societal issues, my core principle is what is the thing that runs the deepest that I am capable of touching? What can I touch? Like I can stand around and bitch about, Congress or whatever. I can't touch that. I have no effect on that. What I can do, given my skills, is I know really well how to teach people how to shoot, how to teach people tactics, how to teach people how to breach doors, and how to teach them what the Constitution actually says. So law enforcement as a culture has focused for about 45 years now on the preeminence of case law over constitutional law. Case law is malleable, it can be changed. The Constitution cannot. So that's a whole nother 2-hour conversation about
Yep.
that we won't get into right now. But understanding that, there are 5 things that are super important. There's more than 5. There's 206 total, and
206.
there's about 10 that are super important, not only for the cops, but more importantly for the victims of crimes, the residents of underserved jurisdictions. These things are very important for them because every unjustified use of force, every unnecessary use of force, every um, overexertion of governmental authority, like walking down the middle of the street shooting people on their own front porch with pepperball guns because the freaking governor told you to.
Yep.
Like stuff like that degrades the trust of a small community in their law enforcement officers, and they begin to be seen as an occupying force.
Mm-hmm.
And that's already happening in the big cities. How do we reduce the likelihood of that? Make it easier for those departments to actually serve their communities, right? I figure that with my skill set, what I'm good at, and what is needed, I've identified 5 of those skills. So the foundation exists to teach those guys those 5 skills, right? In 2 different formats that we'll get to. The other large problem that we've identified is there is no centralized repository or ability to get a think tank type operation for small jurisdiction law enforcement. There's hundreds of white papers and PhD theses on criminal justice. There is no one place that a department can contact and say, I've had this long term problem of XYZ. I need to know how to constitutionally, wisely, and within my community's expectations, how to solve that problem. So there is no, and that requires an institute or a think tank. So that's kind of the second mission set for the foundation.
Okay.
And the third one is a mobile training team that is not intended to drive around the country, because there's tons of great training available to guys who are willing to pay for it. That's not
Mm-hmm.
a problem, right? This is the golden age of getting trained how to shoot. Like there's lots of great people teaching that. And that's not
Tons.
and
Yeah.
and they're phenomenal. Like we
Mm-hmm.
need them. That's why I don't teach that anymore. That problem is being solved. So
But one of those problems in
the
this particular case is going to be, you mentioned this earlier, driving
Mhm.
around, right? Making barely enough money to get you your gas in your hotel on the
Mhm.
other end to basically do a service for somebody, like
Mhm.
going into a small town, or let's go into a region with a couple of small
Mhm.
agencies. If they can't put butts in those seats, they're not going there, man. They
Right.
can't afford to do that. They can
Mhm.
give it away a couple of times and maybe feel good about it, but they have to put food on their table. And so if they
Mhm.
can't go pack a class, and when I say pack a class, 16 to 20 students
Mhm.
or whatever their nut is they
Right.
got to make to cover their expenses,
Mhm.
they're not going there. So as many of them as there are out there that are doing a great job, and there's as many officers that would gladly pay if they could afford it, right? If it's,
Mhm.
hey, I've got the time off, I can go and I drive an hour to go do it. But if I've got to
Mhm.
get on an airplane to travel to a big city where this is being
Mhm.
offered, or a much larger region where this is being offered, that starts to put these things, or starts to make these things inaccessible.